Advanced Residential Applications and Case Studies. Chapter 7, The Sales Comparison Approach, page 3. Traditional Sales Comparison Approach. In a typical residential appraisal, the most emphasis is usually placed on the sales comparison approach. There are several reasons why. First, it usually works well. Millions of residential sales occur each year, and millions of residential appraisals are completed each year using only the sales comparison approach. Read any appraisal text or take any appraisal course, and you will be instructed that the sales comparison approach is the preferred approach for residential properties, especially single-family homes. It is based on the principle of substitution. It works much the same way as people think. It mimics the way that typical homebuyers approach a valuation problem. Most anyone can understand the logic behind this approach. Gee, the house next door to mine just sold for $200,000, and it is almost identical to mine. I guess that's how much my house is worth now. Second, when you look at almost any appraisal report form, you will see a sales grid that instructs the appraiser to enter and analyze information on at least 3 comparable sales. Most clients expect the sales comparison approach will be developed in an appraisal of a 1 to 4 family residential property. On the current 2005 version of the URAR form, the sales comparison approach takes up one of the 3 pages devoted to the valuation of the property. The cost approach and income approaches, which together occupy about 1/3 of a page, are prominently labeled as not required by Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac do not require the cost or income approaches, but they do require that you complete and rely on the sales comparison approach. The fact is that most clients and intended users, especially mortgage lenders, expect the appraiser to use the sales comparison approach to value the property. Remember, however, that the one weakness of the sales comparison approach is that it requires an adequate number of similar, recently sold, nearby comparable sales. Even in the best of times and markets, this may be difficult. Many appraisers who operate in rural areas or economically depressed areas fight a running battle. Where do I find good comps? How can they expect me to find 3 decent sales within a mile and that sold in the last 6 months? Perhaps there have only been 5 sales in that end of the county in the last year, and they are all different types of houses. Of course, now we are talking about complex properties. Those by definition are different. They are one of a kind in style, size, location, or physical characteristics. They are the igloo style house in the midst of a neighborhood of Pueblo style houses. Or they have odd or unusual legal characteristics. They are the life estate or the leasehold estate, or they are the only house on a 2-mile long right of way. Maybe they would be perfectly normal houses if the local plant hadn't just closed, or if the only high school in a 25-mile radius hadn't recently been boarded up because of toxic contamination. So what do you do if you get that dreaded assignment and you know there are not comps out there? Do you give it up and walk away? Do you plead ignorance or hide behind the competency rule? There might be other ways to approach the appraisal problem. Maybe you need to exercise a little creativity. First, you may have to fall back on the cost approach or income approach. They are not completely unusable and may assume greater prominence when appraising complex properties. We will look at them in the next chapter. Right now, though, let's look at a few non-traditional ways you may be able to employ the sales comparison approach or some variations. Page 4, going back in time. If a property is truly unique and there are a number of factors that add to the complexity of the assignment, by definition, there will be few comparables and possibly no comparable that would meet typical underwriting requirements. This is a good time to start thinking outside the box rather than looking for comps that fit a specific time frame. Expand beyond your typical search parameters for date of sale. In other words, go back and search beyond the typical 6-month or 1-year time frame. All appraisers have learned over the years that the most important factors to consider in valuing real estate are location, location, and location. Therefore, a dated sale in the same general location as the subject property that is otherwise similar can be a reliable indicator of value, particularly if a market conditions adjustment, sometimes called a time adjustment, is the only adjustment necessary. Typically, a market conditions adjustment is one of the easiest adjustments to support. The exception would be in a market where there have been few or no sales over an extended period of time. However, even in that case, it may be possible to extract the adjustment from another market. Of course, it is necessary to use dated comparable sales. The reason or reasons no more recent comparable sales were used must be fully explained. When the subject is located in an area that is so unusual that it is not possible to find sales from another market area, going back in time may be the only option. Examples of this type of unique location include: number 1, homes located in a designated historic district. These homes often have restrictions limiting changes that would alter the historic design. Such designated historic districts are rare in many parts of the country. There may be no similar historic districts within 100 miles of the subject. Number 2, homes located in an area with special characteristics such as lakefront or oceanfront properties. Waterfront properties will usually sell at a significant premium over similar properties in the same project that are not on the water. If there have been no recent sales of properties on the water, the appraiser will need to go back in time to find such sales. Then a market conditions adjustment should be applied. Another issue with this type of property is making an appropriate adjustment for the view premium of the water location. Sales may be available of homes not on the water. Care must be taken to adequately support the upward adjustment for the non-water location. In many cases, this might be in the 20% to 35% range or even more. Number 3, resort communities are a third category that may be unique. There are no comparable properties outside the community itself. This type of community is often associated with a particular activity such as skiing, golf, or a health spa. If recent sales are limited and there are no other comparable resort communities in the same general area, the only choice is to go back in time to find sales of comparable properties. End of page.